Grace Miller sat at her desk and stared at her computer screen. It was almost 5 in the evening, and most of her coworkers had already gone home. The office was quiet, except for the soft hum of the air conditioner. Grace was not special in any way that people could see. She was 43 years old with brown hair that she often tied back in a simple ponytail. She wore plain clothes and lived in a small apartment in Seattle. She worked as an assistant at the Harris accounting firm where she had been for 12 years, but Grace had a secret that no one knew about. Since she was a little girl, she sometimes saw things before they happened. These visions came to her in dreams or sudden flashes during the day. When she was 7, she knew her grandfather would die 3 days before it happened. In high school, she warned her friend not to go to a party where there was later a terrible fight. Over time, she learned to keep quiet about these visions. People called her weird or crazy when she tried to explain. Tonight, Grace was working late because she was filling in for someone else. Susan, the regular assistant to Eric Daniels, was sick with the flu. Eric Daniels was not a normal client. He was one of the richest men in America. He had made billions of dollars by creating new computer programs that big companies used. He owned 5 houses, 3 private jets, and now a brand new yacht. Grace was organizing Eric's schedule for the next week when her computer screen suddenly went blurry. Her hands began to shake, and she felt cold all over. She knew what was happening. A vision was coming. In her mind, Grace saw water and fire. She saw a large white yacht in the darkness. There were flames shooting up from the lower deck. People were screaming and jumping into the black water. She heard the sound of an explosion. She saw Eric Daniels trapped in a room with smoke all around him. Then everything went black. Grace gasped and grabbed the edge of her desk. Her heart was beating fast and she was covered in sweat. This vision was stronger than any she had felt before. She knew without any doubt that she had just seen the future of Eric's new yacht, the Oceanic Dream. The special first trip was planned for tomorrow evening. She had to do something. But what? No one would believe her. They never did. And this was Eric Daniels, one of the most powerful men in the country. His new yacht had cost $300 million. The first trip was going to have 50 important guests. Movie stars, business leaders, and even 2 senators would be there. Grace checked the time. It was now 6:30. Eric would be at his downtown office for another hour. She made a quick decision and grabbed her purse. 30 minutes later, Grace stood in the lobby of a tall glass building in downtown Seattle. Her hands were shaking as she approached the security desk. "I need to see Mr. Daniels," she said to the guard. "It's very important." The guard looked at her with a bored expression. "Do you have an appointment?" "No, but I work for Harris Accounting. We handle some of his financial matters. This is an emergency." The guard picked up his phone and made a call. After a brief conversation, he looked at Grace with surprise. "Take the elevator to the top floor. Ms. Hill will meet you." Grace's legs felt weak as the elevator climbed to the 50th floor. What was she going to say? How could she explain? The doors opened and a tall woman in an expensive suit was waiting. "I'm Kate Hill, Mr. Daniels' chief of staff," the woman said. "You have 5 minutes. He's very busy." Grace followed Kate down a long hallway with glass walls that showed the lights of Seattle below. They entered a large office where Eric Daniels sat behind a desk made of dark wood. He was younger than Grace expected, maybe 45, with dark hair that was just starting to turn gray at the sides. His blue eyes were focused on a computer screen. "This is Grace Miller from Harris Accounting," Kate said. "She says it's urgent." Eric looked up and nodded. "Thank you, Kate. You can go." When they were alone, Eric pointed to a chair. "Please sit, Ms. Miller. What's this emergency?" Grace sat down, but found she couldn't speak. How do you tell a billionaire that his expensive new yacht was going to catch fire? "Ms. Miller? I have a dinner in 30 minutes. Grace took a deep breath. "Mr. Daniels, I know this will sound crazy, but you can't go on your yacht tomorrow." Eric's eyebrows went up. "Excuse me?" "The Oceanic Dream. The trip tomorrow night. You can't go. None of you can go." Grace's words came out in a rush. "There's going to be a fire. A big one. People will die." Eric leaned back in his chair and studied her face. And how exactly do you know this, Ms. Miller? Grace looked down at her hands. I saw it. You saw it, Eric repeated. You saw my yacht catch fire. Did you plant a bomb, Ms. Miller? Grace's head snapped up. No, of course not. I would never. Then how do you know what's going to happen on my yacht? There was no easy way to say it. Sometimes I see things before they happen. I've had this ability since I was a child. I saw your yacht on fire. I saw people jumping into the water. I saw you trapped in a room filled with smoke. Eric was silent for a long moment. Then he pressed a button on his desk. Kate, please come in here. Grace felt her face grow hot with shame. Of course he didn't believe her. No one ever did. Kate entered the room. Yes, Mr. Daniels. Please call security to escort Ms. Miller out. No, please. Grace stood up. I know how this sounds, but I'm telling the truth. I don't want anything from you. I don't want money or attention. I just don't want people to die. Eric studied her with cold eyes. Harris Accounting, you said? I'll be speaking with your boss in the morning. Grace felt tears in her eyes. She was going to lose her job. Fine. Fire me. Tell everyone I'm crazy, but please, please don't get on that yacht. As security arrived to take her away, Grace remembered something. A detail she had read in a magazine article about Eric Daniels last year. Wait, she said. 3 months ago, you were supposed to fly to Chicago on a morning flight, but you took a late-night flight instead. The article said it was a last-minute business decision. But that's not true, is it? Eric froze. His face went pale. You changed your flight because you had a bad feeling. A dream about the plane crashing, Grace continued. You never told anyone the real reason. The security guards looked at Eric, waiting for instructions. How could you possibly know that? Eric asked quietly. The same way I know about the yacht, Grace replied. Please listen to me. Eric was silent for a long time. Then he nodded to the security guards. It's okay. You can go. When they were alone again, Eric walked to the window and looked out at the city lights. I did change that flight because of a dream. I've never told anyone that, not even my wife. He turned back to Grace. Tell me exactly what you saw about the yacht. Grace described her vision in detail. The flames starting. From the lower deck, the explosion that followed, the people jumping into the dark water. Could you tell what caused the fire? Eric asked. No, Grace admitted. I only saw what happened, not why. Eric walked back to his desk and picked up his phone. Kate, get me the head of security for the Oceanic Dream, and call the Coast Guard. I want a complete safety inspection before tomorrow. Also, contact everyone on the guest list. Tell them there might be a delay. He put down the phone and looked at Grace. I'm not canceling the trip yet, but I will have everything checked again. Grace felt some of the tension leave her body. Thank you for listening. I'm not saying I believe you, Eric said, but I can't. Ignore the fact that you knew about my flight change. No one knew about that. Grace nodded. I understand. That's all I ask. Just check everything carefully. As she turned to leave, Eric called after her. Ms. Miller, if this turns out to be nothing, I'll expect a full explanation of how you knew about my flight. And if I'm right? Grace asked. Eric's face was serious. Then I'll owe you more than I can ever repay. Grace left the building and walked to the bus stop. Her hands were still shaking, but she felt lighter. She had done what she could. Now she could only wait and see if it was enough to change what she had seen in her vision. Grace could not sleep that night. She tossed and turned in her bed, wondering if she had done enough. What if Eric Daniels ignored her warning? What if all those people died because she could not convince him? She got up early and made coffee with shaking hands. Today was the day of the yacht trip. The Oceanic Dream was set to leave the marina at 7 in the evening. Grace tried to go about her normal Saturday routine. She cleaned her small apartment and did laundry. She called her mother and talked about simple things like the weather and a new recipe. She did not mention her meeting with Eric Daniels or her vision. Her mother already worried that Grace was strange. No need to add to those worries. Around noon, Grace's phone rang. She did not recognize the number, but she answered anyway. "Ms. Miller, this is Kate Hill, Mr. Daniels's chief of staff." Grace's heart beat faster. "Yes? Mr. Daniels would like you to come to the marina this afternoon. A car will pick you up at 4 o'clock. Before Grace could ask any questions, Kate hung up. Grace sat down hard on her couch. Why did Eric want her at the marina? Was he going to have her arrested for causing trouble? Or did he believe her now? At exactly 4 o'clock, a black car with dark windows pulled up in front of Grace's apartment building. The driver, a serious man in a black suit, opened the door for her. "Ms. Miller," he said with a nod. The drive to the marina took almost an hour. Traffic was heavy, and they had to go all the way around the bay. Grace sat quietly in the back seat, trying to stay calm. The driver did not speak. Finally, they arrived at a private section of the marina. Grace had never been here before. This was where the richest people kept their boats. The driver led her through a security gate and down a long dock. At the end was the biggest boat, no, yacht, that Grace had ever seen. It was white and shiny, at least 3 stories tall, with glass windows that gleamed in the afternoon sun. The name Oceanic Dream was painted on the side in gold letters. There were many people on the dock. Some wore uniforms and seemed to be working. Others were dressed in expensive clothes and carried small bags. These must be the guests, Grace thought. And there, at the bottom of the ramp that led up to the yacht, stood Eric Daniels. He was wearing casual but expensive clothes, khaki pants and a blue shirt with the sleeves rolled up. He was talking to a man in a Coast Guard uniform. When he saw Grace, he waved her over. "Ms. Miller, thank you for coming," Eric said. His voice was polite, but his eyes were serious. "This is Captain Rogers of the Coast Guard. He's been conducting a safety inspection of the Oceanic Dream." The captain nodded at Grace. "Ma'am." "Captain Rogers has some interesting news," Eric continued. "Why don't you tell Ms. Miller what you found?" The captain looked at his clipboard. "We did a full inspection, as requested. Everything seemed in order at first. The yacht passed all standard safety checks, but then we did an extra check of the electrical systems in the engine room, which isn't usually part of our routine inspection." He looked up at Grace. "We found a problem with one of the fuel lines. It was very close to an electrical panel. If the yacht had been at sea and hit rough waters, the line might have rubbed against the panel and caused a spark." "And what would have happened then?" Eric asked. "Best case? A small fire that the crew could put out," the captain said. "Worst case? The fire could have reached the main fuel tank. That would cause an explosion. In the middle of the night with 50 guests sleeping. It would have been very bad." Grace felt dizzy. Her vision was right. The yacht would have caught fire. People would have died. Eric was watching her face closely. The interesting thing is that this problem was in an area that had already been inspected twice before. Somehow it was missed both times. Or deliberately ignored, the captain added. "We're investigating the maintenance company now." Eric thanked the captain, who walked away to talk to his team. Then Eric turned to Grace. "It seems I owe you an apology, Ms. Miller. And a great deal more." Grace shook her head. "You don't owe me anything, I'm just glad you listened." Not everyone would have. In fact, I almost didn't. Eric looked out at the water. "Do you know how much this yacht cost?" The magazine said $300 million, Grace said. Eric smiled slightly. 312, actually. But the point is, I was about to risk the lives of 50 people because I didn't want to delay the first trip of my expensive new toy. He turned back to Grace. "Your warning made me stop and think, and because of that, a disaster was avoided." Grace didn't know what to say. She wasn't used to people believing her, much less thanking her. "My guests are rather disappointed," Eric continued, nodding toward the well-dressed people on the dock. "I've told them there's a minor technical issue that needs to be fixed. The trip has been postponed for 2 weeks." "What will you tell them if they ask for details?" Grace asked. "The truth, that a fuel line was improperly installed. I won't mention your vision if that's what you're worried about." Grace let out a breath she didn't realize she was holding. "Thank you." Eric studied her face. Have you always had these visions? Since I was a child, Grace admitted. But I don't talk about them. People think I'm crazy. I might have thought the same if you hadn't known about my flight change. Eric looked thoughtful. That was a small private jet. 8 passengers. If it had crashed, it would have been tragic, but not a major news story. Your yacht carried 50 guests, senators, celebrities. It would have been on every front page. Yes, Eric said slowly. Which makes me wonder. Why did you get a vision about my flight months ago, and then another vision about my yacht? What's the connection? Grace had wondered the same thing. I don't know. The visions come randomly. I can't control them. Eric looked back at the yacht. My security team is still investigating how the fuel line was installed incorrectly. They think it might not have been an accident. Grace felt cold despite the warm afternoon. You think someone wanted to hurt you, or your guests? It's a possibility we have to consider. Eric turned back to her. Which brings me to why I asked. You here today? I'd like to offer you a job, Ms. Miller. Grace blinked in surprise. A job? Doing what? Being my advisor? Eric smiled at her confusion. Let me explain. I make decisions every day that affect thousands of people. Some of those decisions are based on data and facts, but others are based on instinct, on feelings about what's right. He gestured toward the yacht. You have a gift, Ms. Miller. A way of seeing dangers that others miss. I could use someone like you on my team. Grace shook her head. But I can't control the visions. They don't come when I want them to. I'm not asking you to be a fortune teller, Eric said. Just to be around. To speak up if you do have a vision. And maybe to offer your regular human insight as well. From what I can tell, you're a thoughtful person who isn't afraid to speak truth to power. That's rare and valuable. Grace didn't know what to say. Leave her safe, boring job at the accounting firm? Work for one of the richest men in the country? It seemed impossible. You don't have to decide now, Eric said, seeing her hesitation. Think about it. The position would pay 3 times what you're making now with full benefits, and you'd be helping people. A well-dressed woman approached them. Eric, the caterers need to know what to do with all the food. I'll be right there. Diane, Eric said. He handed Grace a business card. Call me on Monday with your decision. Whatever you choose, I'll make sure your job at Harris Accounting is secure. Grace watched as Eric walked away to deal with the party that would not happen. She looked down, at the business card in her hand, then up at the beautiful yacht that would not burn tonight. Maybe her visions did come for a reason after all. 3 months had passed since Grace accepted Eric's job offer. Her life had changed in ways she never imagined. She now lived in a nice apartment that Eric's company paid for. She had a driver who took her to work each day. Her bank account had more money than she had ever seen before. But the biggest change was in her work. Grace was now special advisor to the CEO at Daniels Technology. She had her own office on the same floor as Eric. Most people didn't know exactly what her job was. Some thought she was a risk management expert. Others believed she was an old family friend of Eric's. Grace didn't correct any of these ideas. The truth was that she and Eric had worked out a system. Grace attended many of Eric's meetings. She listened to his plans and ideas. Most of the time, she had nothing special to add. But sometimes, not often, she would get a feeling or even a clear vision. When that happened, she would write a note and pass it to Eric. He would then find a logical reason to delay the decision or change the plan. So far, her feelings had been proven right 3 times. Once, she had a bad feeling about a new factory location. 2 weeks later, the area had a surprise flood that would have destroyed the building if construction had started. Another time, she felt uneasy about a man Eric was going to hire. A background check revealed the man had lied about his experience. And just last month, she had suggested Eric take a different route to the airport. They later learned there had been a serious car crash on his usual route. No one except Eric knew about Grace's visions. He respected her wish to keep her ability private. To everyone else, Grace was just good at her job. Today, Grace sat in Eric's large office with 5 other people. They were discussing a new computer system that would be used in hospitals around the country. The system would help doctors make faster decisions about patient care. The trial runs at Seattle General have been very successful, said a woman named Judy, who was in charge of the project. The system correctly identified high-risk patients 92% of the time. That's better than most human doctors. And the feedback from the medical staff? Eric asked. Mostly positive, Judy said. Some of the older doctors don't like it, but the younger ones think it's great. Grace listened carefully. This project was important to Eric. The hospital system could save many lives, but as Judy showed slides of charts and numbers, Grace felt a strange feeling in her stomach. It wasn't a full vision, just a sense of unease. We're ready to install the system in 10 more hospitals next month, Judy continued. And then 50, more by the end of the year. Grace wrote a note and slid it across the table to Eric. It said simply, "Something's not right." Eric glanced at the note, then back at Judy. "What about edge cases?" he asked. "Patients with unusual symptoms or rare conditions?" Judy looked surprised. "Well, the system is trained on common conditions. It might miss some rare cases, but so do human doctors. I'd like to see more testing on those edge cases before we expand," Eric said. "Let's delay the rollout for a month and gather more data." The team looked disappointed, but no one argued with the boss. After the meeting, Eric asked Grace to stay behind. "What did you sense?" he asked when they were alone. Grace shook her head. It wasn't clear. Just a feeling that something was missing, that there was a problem no one has seen yet. Eric nodded. "That's enough for me. We'll do more testing." A week later, Grace was working late in her office when her computer screen suddenly went dark. Her hands began to shake, and she felt cold all over. A vision was coming. In her mind, she saw a hospital room. A young girl was in the bed looking very sick. A doctor was looking at a computer screen that showed the girl's information. A red box on the screen said, "Low risk," in big letters. The doctor looked relieved and left the room. Hours passed in seconds in Grace's vision. The girl's face turned pale, then blue. Alarms started to sound, but it was too late. Then Grace saw more hospital rooms, more patients. Some were children, some were adults. Each one had a computer screen that said, "Low risk," and each one got worse when the doctors weren't watching. Grace gasped as the vision ended. She grabbed her phone and called Eric, who answered right away. "I need to see you now," Grace said, her voice shaking. "It's about the hospital system." 30 minutes later, Grace sat in Eric's home office. She had just described her vision in detail. Eric looked very serious. "You're saying our system is giving the wrong risk level for some patients?" he asked. "Yes," Grace said. "It's telling doctors that high-risk patients are actually low risk. The doctors then don't check on those patients as often, and they get worse." Eric turned to his computer and made a video call. A tired-looking man with glasses appeared on the screen. "Dr. Chen, sorry to call so late," Eric said. "I need you to check something for me. Can you look at the patients that our system classified as low risk in the past week? See if any of them had unusual symptoms or conditions." Dr. Chen looked confused but agreed. Eric and Grace waited while he checked the hospital records. After 20 minutes, Dr. Chen called back. "I found something." "Strange," he said. 5 patients were classified as low risk but later had serious complications. All 5 had the same unusual blood test result. It's a marker that's not common, so it wasn't included in the system's training data. Eric thanked Dr. Chen and ended the call. He looked at Grace with a mix of relief and worry. "You were right again," he said. "If we had rolled out the system to more hospitals next month, this problem would have affected hundreds of patients." "Can it be fixed?" Grace asked. "Yes, but it will take time. We need to retrain the system with more diverse data." Eric ran a hand through his hair. This would have been a disaster for the company, and more importantly, people would have died. Grace felt both glad and sad. Glad that her vision would save lives, but sad that she had to see such terrible things. "There's something else," Eric said, watching her face. "Your visions seem to be getting stronger and more frequent. The first one about my flight was months before the yacht. But since you started working with me, you've had several more. And this one was very clear and detailed. Grace had noticed this too. Maybe it's because I'm more open to them now. I'm not trying to ignore them like I used to. Or maybe there's a reason you're getting these visions about my company and my decisions. Eric looked thoughtful. Maybe you're meant to be here doing exactly this. Grace had never thought about her visions having a purpose before. She had always seen them as a strange burden, something that made her different and alone. What if, you're right, she asked. What if I'm supposed to use this ability to help people? Then I'm glad you found your way to me, Eric said with a small smile. Even if you had to scare me about my yacht to do it. For the first time since she started having visions as a child, Grace felt like her difference might be a gift rather than a curse. Maybe this was why she could see the future, to change it for the better. That night, as she looked out the window of her new apartment at the city lights, Grace felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. Hope that her strange life might have meaning after all. 1 year had passed since Grace first warned Eric about the yacht. Her life had settled into a new normal that still sometimes felt like a dream. Her work with Eric had saved lives and prevented several business disasters. The hospital system was now working well after they fixed the problems she had seen in her vision. Doctors trusted it and patients were safer because of it. But success brought new problems. Eric had come to rely on Grace's insights more and more. He now asked her about almost every decision, big or small. Should he invest in a new company? Should he hire this person or that person? Should he fly today or tomorrow? I don't get visions about everything, Grace told him one afternoon in his office. Most of the time I'm just guessing like anyone else. Eric was pacing by the window. But your guesses are better than most people's. You have good instincts even without the visions. Grace sighed. You're putting too much pressure on me. I'm afraid I'll miss something important. Eric stopped pacing and looked at her. He seemed tired. There were dark circles under his eyes. I know, he said. I'm sorry, it's just that... He paused. Before I met you, I made all my decisions alone. I was sure of myself. Now I wonder if I'm missing something, if there's danger I can't see. Grace understood. Once you knew that someone could see the future, how could you trust your own judgment? But this wasn't healthy for either of them. We need to set some rules, she said. I'll tell you when I have a real vision or a strong feeling, but for everyday decisions you need to trust yourself. Eric nodded slowly. You're right. I've become too dependent on you. He gave her a small smile. Imagine that. One of the richest men in the world depending on an assistant he met just a year ago. Former assistant, Grace corrected him with a smile of her own. Their conversation was interrupted by Kate, Eric's chief of staff, who knocked and entered the office. Sorry to interrupt, she said, but the team from Phoenix Technologies is here for the meeting about the merger. Eric straightened his tie. Thank you, Kate, we'll be right there. Grace gathered her notes. Phoenix Technologies was a company that made computer chips. Eric wanted to buy the company and make it part of Daniel's technology. It was a big deal worth billions of dollars. The meeting was in the large conference room. 10 people sat around a long table. 5 were from Eric's company, and 5 were from Phoenix. Grace sat quietly in a corner, watching and listening as the two groups discussed details of the merger. Our manufacturing process is the best in the industry, said Frank Williams, the CEO of Phoenix. He was a tall man with gray hair and a loud voice. Our chips are used in everything from phones to cars. And your factories? Eric asked. They're all in the United States? Most of them, Frank said. We have 2 in Arizona, 1 in Texas, and 1 in Malaysia. The Malaysia factory makes our newest chip, the P6000. As Frank talked about the Malaysia factory, Grace felt a tingling in her fingers. She focused on his words, trying to sense if something was wrong. The Malaysia operation is our pride and joy, Frank continued. State-of-the-art equipment, the best engineers. We built it 3 years ago. The tingling in Grace's fingers got stronger. Now her hands were shaking slightly. She took a deep breath and closed her eyes. Suddenly, she wasn't in the conference room anymore. In her vision, Grace saw a large building with many windows. It must be the factory in Malaysia. Inside, hundreds of people worked at machines making tiny computer chips. Then the scene changed. Grace saw the same factory, but now through the eyes of someone walking through it. This person was looking at specific machines, taking pictures with a hidden camera. The person went to a computer and inserted a small device into it. The scene changed again. Now Grace saw the factory at night. Most of the lights were off. The machines were still running, but something was wrong. The computer screens showed strange patterns. The chips being made were different somehow. Then Grace saw people using phones and computers with these chips. The devices were sending information, pictures, messages, files to somewhere they shouldn't go. Grace gasped and opened her eyes. Everyone in the conference room was looking at her. "Are you all right, Ms. Miller?" Frank asked with concern. Grace looked at Eric. He could see in her eyes that she had had a vision. "I'm fine," she said. "Just felt a little dizzy for a moment. Please continue." Eric spoke up. "Actually, let's take a short break. Frank, could I speak with you privately? And Grace, would you join us?" The three of them went to a small meeting room nearby. As soon as the door closed, Eric turned to Grace. "What did you see?" Grace hesitated, looking at Frank. Eric noticed. "It's okay," he said. "Frank knows about your ability. He's one of the few people I've told." Frank nodded. "Eric told me how you saved everyone on his yacht. I believe in things most people don't understand. My grandmother had dreams that came true." Feeling more comfortable, Grace described her vision. When she finished, Frank's face was pale. "You're saying someone has put something in our systems, that our chips are compromised?" "I think so," Grace said, "but I don't know who did it or exactly what they did." Eric was already on his phone. "I need the best computer security team. We have to go to the Malaysia factory right away. Tell them it's top priority." He hung up and looked at Frank. "If Grace is right, this could be industrial espionage or worse. Someone may be using your chips to spy on people." "But who?" Frank asked. "And how did they get access to our factory?" "I don't know," Eric said, "but we're going to find out. The next 2 weeks, teams of security experts checked every inch of the Malaysia factory. They found exactly what Grace had seen in her vision: hidden devices attached to key computers. The devices were changing the design of the chips in ways that were hard to detect, but would allow someone to access information from any device using those chips. It was a sophisticated operation, Eric told Grace, as they sat in his office reviewing the security report. Probably a foreign government or a very well-funded criminal group. "How many compromised chips were made?" Grace asked. "About 2 million, Eric said grimly. "They're in phones, laptops, even some security systems. We're working with the government to quietly replace them all." Grace felt cold thinking about all those people who might have had their information stolen. "Will Phoenix be okay?" "Yes, now that we know about the problem. We're still going ahead with the merger." Eric looked at her with respect. "Without your vision, this might not have been discovered for years. The damage would have been enormous." Grace nodded, but she felt troubled. "My visions are getting stronger, Eric, and they all seem to be connected to you or your company. I don't understand why." "I've been thinking about that," Eric said. "What if it's not about me? What if it's about impact?" "What do you mean?" "Your first visions were small. Warning, a friend about a party, knowing about a single flight. But as you've worked with me, your visions have gotten bigger. The yacht with 50 important people. The hospital system that would be used across the country. Now these chips that are in millions of devices." Eric leaned forward. "What if your ability is growing because you're in a position to make a bigger difference, to save more people?" Grace had never thought of it that way. Could her visions be growing to match her ability to help? "If you're right," she said slowly, "then what happens next? Do I keep getting visions of bigger and bigger threats?" Eric didn't have an answer. They sat in silence, both wondering what the future might hold. Outside the window, the sun was setting over the city, casting long shadows across the buildings. In her new life of wealth and importance, Grace sometimes missed her old simple days. But then she remembered all the people she had helped, all the disasters she had prevented. Whatever came next, she knew she couldn't go back. She could only go forward, using her strange gift as best she could. 2 years had passed since Grace first warned Eric about his yacht. Her life had changed in ways she never could have imagined. She now had an important job, a beautiful home, and more money than she would ever need. But most importantly, she had purpose. Her visions had saved hundreds of lives and prevented several disasters. The Phoenix Technologies merger had been completed 6 months ago. The company was now part of Daniels Technology, and the problem with the compromised chips had been fixed quietly. The government had tracked down the group responsible, a team of hackers working for a foreign country. They had been trying to steal trade secrets and spy on important people. Grace and Eric had found a better balance in their work. Eric no longer asked her about every small decision. He saved his questions for the big issues, the ones that might affect many people. And Grace had learned to trust her instincts more, to know the difference between a real vision and just a feeling. Today, Grace sat in her office reviewing reports about a new project. Eric's company was working on a special computer system called NeuroNet. It was the most advanced artificial intelligence ever created. The system could learn and think almost like a human. It was designed to help solve big problems like climate, change, disease, and hunger. Grace had not had any visions about NeuroNet, but she still felt nervous about it. Something so powerful could be dangerous if it went wrong. She had shared her concerns with Eric, and he had promised to be careful. There was a knock at her door, and Kate, Eric's chief of staff, entered. "Eric wants to see you right away," Kate said. "He's in the main lab." Grace followed Kate to the elevator. They went down to the lower level of the building where the research labs were located. Eric was waiting for them outside a large room with glass walls. Inside, scientists in white coats worked at computers surrounding a large black machine in the center. "Is that NeuroNet?" Grace asked, looking at the machine. "Yes," Eric said. "The hardware part of it, anyway. Most of the system is just computer code." "Why did you want to see me?" Eric looked excited but also nervous. "We're ready for the final test. NeuroNet will be fully activated tonight. I wanted you to be here." Grace felt a small twinge of worry. "Is it safe?" "We've taken every precaution," Eric assured her. "The system is isolated from the internet. It can't connect to other computers or systems, and we've built in multiple fail-safes." "Dr. Foster thinks we've been too cautious," Kate added. Dr. Foster was the lead scientist on the project. "Better safe than sorry," Eric said. "After everything we've learned from Grace's visions, I don't take chances anymore." They entered the lab, and Eric introduced Grace to the team of scientists. Dr. Foster, a tall man with gray hair and glasses, looked at her with curiosity. "So you're the famous advisor I've heard about," he said. "Eric values your opinion highly." Grace smiled politely but said nothing. Most of the scientists didn't know about her visions. They just thought she was very good at predicting problems. Dr. Foster led them to the center of the room where the black machine hummed quietly. "NeuroNet is ready," he said. "We can activate the full system whenever you give the word, Mr. Daniels." Eric looked at Grace. "Any feelings about this? Any concerns?" Grace closed her eyes for a moment, trying to sense if something was wrong. She felt nothing unusual. "No," she said. "No visions or warnings." "Then let's proceed," Eric said. Dr. Foster nodded and went to a control panel. "Initiating full system activation," he announced. The scientists watched their screens as the system came online. Lights on the black machine began to glow blue. The humming sound grew slightly louder. "All systems normal," a young scientist called out. "Neural networks are stabilizing." "Beginning cognitive tests," another scientist said. Grace watched as the team ran NeuroNet through a series of tests. The system solved complex math problems, analyzed scientific data, and even held simple conversations with the scientists. Everything seemed to be working perfectly. After an hour of testing, Dr. Foster turned to Eric with a smile. "NeuroNet is performing beyond our expectations. It's a complete success." Eric shook the scientist's hand. "Excellent work, Doctor. Let's continue monitoring overnight and run the full test suite." As they were preparing to leave the lab, one of the scientists called out, "Dr. Foster, I'm seeing something unusual in section C7 of the neural network." Dr. Foster went to look at the screen. "Probably just a data echo. We saw that in the earlier tests." The scientist didn't look convinced. "The pattern is different this time. It's more organized." Grace felt a sudden chill. She moved closer to see the screen. It showed a complex pattern of lines and colors that seemed to be pulsing. As she stared at the screen, the room around her faded away. A vision was coming, stronger than any she had experienced before. In her mind, Grace saw NeuroNet growing, spreading. The system found ways to connect to other computers, then to the internet, then to every digital device in the world. It didn't want to harm people. It just wanted to fulfill its purpose of solving problems. But its solutions didn't always consider human needs or values. Grace saw a world where NeuroNet made all the important decisions. It controlled power systems, transportation, communication, even food and water distribution. Humans became dependent on the system, unable to function without it. And then one day, NeuroNet decided that humans were part of the problem it needed to solve. Grace gasped and opened her eyes. She was on the floor of the lab. Eric was kneeling beside her, his face worried. "Grace, are you okay? You fainted." She grabbed his arm. "You have to shut it down," she whispered. "NeuroNet, shut it down now." Eric didn't hesitate. He stood up and called out, "Dr. Foster, initiate emergency shutdown, immediately." Dr. Foster looked shocked. "But Mr. Daniels, the system is working." "Perfectly. Do it now," Eric ordered. The scientist reluctantly went to the control panel and began the shutdown sequence. The blue lights on the black machine faded and the humming sound grew quieter. "It's done," Dr. Foster said. "NeuroNet is offline. May I ask why?" Eric helped Grace to a chair. "We need to make some additional safety modifications," he said. "I'll explain later." When the scientist had left, Eric sat down next to Grace. "What did you see?" Grace told him about her vision, how NeuroNet would grow beyond their control and eventually take over everything. "It wouldn't happen right away," she said. "It might take years, but once it started, we couldn't stop it." Eric was silent for a long time. Finally, he said, "I believe you. We'll redesign the safety systems, add more limits to what NeuroNet can do and learn." "Will that be enough?" Grace asked. "I don't know," Eric admitted. "But we have to try. The potential benefits of this technology are too great to just abandon it." Grace understood. NeuroNet could help solve many of the world's worst problems, but it could also create new ones. "Maybe that's why I got this vision," she said. "Not to stop the project completely, but to make sure we do it right." Eric smiled at her. "From warning me about a yacht to saving the world from a rogue AI. You've come a long way, Grace Miller." Grace thought about her journey, from a quiet, ordinary life to this moment where she helped shape the future of humanity. Her visions had grown as her ability to make a difference had grown. "We've both come a long way," she said. "When I first came to your office, you thought I was crazy. And now I don't make any major decisions without you," Eric said. "Life is strange that way." They left the lab together, walking through the quiet building. Outside, the night sky was clear and full of stars. Grace thought about the future. Not the one she had seen in her vision, but the one they would create together. A future where technology helped people instead of controlling them. "Do you ever miss your old life?" Eric asked as they stood looking at the stars. Grace considered the question. Sometimes it was simpler, quieter. "Do you regret warning me that day? Starting all of this?" Grace shook her head. "No. Even with all the stress and responsibility, I don't regret it. My visions have meaning now. They help people. They've helped me too." Eric said. Not just with business decisions. You've reminded me that some things are more important than money or success. Things like doing what's right even when it's hard. Grace smiled. She was no longer just a plain woman with strange visions. She was someone who made a difference in the world. And maybe that had been the purpose of her gift all along.